Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Pickles and Bacon Show Rewind. I'm Pickles,
And I'm
and
vacant.
that's my brother Bacon. So sorry about the little delay. We've been super busy since December. We had planned to do Vlogmas, but that didn't work out. But this is a video that we had planned to do since December that we had planned for January, and we had tried to film it last week, but then I had to work doubles, and I was like, "There's just no way." But in case you didn't see the poster behind me,
No,
we
that
are
is not the
discussing
Joker. That is not the Joker, y'all.
the 1994 film The Crow with Brandon Lee, and we're also discussing Brandon Lee. All right, Deke, what do you know about the movie The Crow?
Do I really have to open this book?
Yes, we have to. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of The Crow.
First of all, let me just say rest in peace, Brandon Lee. First of all, let me start out by saying that. Secondly, let me say that I know that this movie, so controversially, before we did this, I never saw the movie The Crow. I knew what happened. I heard the story. I was like, I couldn't bring myself to do it. So
Same.
so Pickles was like, "Hey, let's watch The Crow because the new one had just come out." So I was like, "Okay, fine, whatever." I was like, "My heart's not in it." She's like, "It's not so much your heart I need, it's your eyes." And I said, "Okay, fine." I said, "Okay, fine." So, we did it. Saw the movie. I have to say that it is one of the greatest movies in cinema history ever. And again, rest in peace to Brandon Lee. I also know what happened on the set, which we will get into in a little bit. Hold on a second, because the cat's over here. She's about to knock over my stuff and get my foot up her ass. Um, and I know what happened on the set. I'd seen a lot of unsolved mysteries. I didn't know exactly where it was. I thought it was another scene, but then when I find out where it was, I was like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. So, anyway,
Yeah.
Pickles, go ahead.
So yeah, basically piggybacking off what Deke said, we're 90s kids, we grew up with the lore that Brandon Lee died while making this movie, but neither Deke and I had ever seen this movie like as a kid or as a teenager, which I have to say I'm glad that we didn't because seeing it now through adult eyes when you've lived a lot and you've lived your life and you've had kids and raised your kids and Deke has helped me with my son. Now you can really see like, oh shit, that was fucked up, and like now you can really understand it and what beauty this film is. um I cried a lot just in general, knowing what happened, and like certain scenes really got to me and everything like that. But I also have to say that I bought the remake of The Crow. I have to say it's completely night and day different. Completely different. The only thing that I wish that had changed is instead of Skarsgård being Eric Draven, I wish they had changed the names because then it could have been a different Crow. That was the only thing, and I think Ernie Hudson said that as well. But anyways, I digest. All right, so let's jump into Wikipedia and see what Wikipedia has to say about the Crow. All right, so The Crow is a 1994 American superhero film directed by Eric Proyas and written by David J. Shao and John Shirley. It's based on the 1989 comic book series by James O'Barr. It stars Brandon Lee in his final film role as Eric Draven, a rock musician who's resurrected from the dead to seek vengeance against the gang who murdered him and his fiancee. Lee was fatally wounded by a prop gun, which there are no such things as prop guns, first of all. As he finished most of his scenes, the film was completed through script rewrites, a stunt double, and digital effects. After Lee's death, Paramount Pictures opted out of distribution and the rights were acquired by Miramax Films. The film is dedicated to Lee and his fiancee, Eliza Hutton. I did some research. I believe Eliza liked to be called Lisa, so we're just gonna say her name is Lisa, just from there. Anyways, The Crow premiered in Santa Monica on May 10th, 1994, and was released in the U.S. on May 13th, 1994, by Dimension Films. The film received positive reviews for its style and Lee's performance. It grossed 94 million on a $23 million budget and has gained a cult following. The success led to a media franchise that included the sequels The Crow City of Angels, The Crow Salvation, and The Crow Wicked Prayer. The sequels, which mostly feature different characters and none of the original cast members, were unable to match the success of the first film. A reboot of The Crow was released in 2024, which was a critical and commercial failure, which I feel like it was going to be anyways. All right. So,
Which fair because like even though I haven't seen it yet, which fair because I'm like I'm gonna hold true to the original. Like everything is better on the original.
yeah, see, I think like I understand where they were coming from with the remake. Okay, fine. They changed a lot of things in the remake, which okay, fine. I feel like if they had changed the name of the characters, maybe that would have made a little bit of difference because putting Bill Skarsgård as Eric Draven just was a complete travesty. It wasn't going to work because of Brandon Lee, and then the way they changed the story so much, it wasn't the same. And I think that we're going to talk about it here in a minute. So the first thing that really struck me is when when the movie opens of The Crow, like you see like a ravaged Detroit, and you hear the little girl Sarah. Her voice says something about when someone dies, the crow can resurrect their soul and bring them back. And then basically, the opening scene is where Brandon Lee and Eric Draven and Shelley are murdered in their apartment. Um, and then a year later, he comes back from the dead to avenge their deaths. Um, and that's basically what the plot line of the movie's about. The first thing that I noticed is that um, the opening scene is on. It's called Devil's Night. Where's my American Horror Story fans? So, and I'm reading this part from Wikipedia. Basically, it says the opening night because it's kind of the movie is unfinished in bits and in some places because of his death. So you have to kind of like know what's going on or whatever. But the movie opens on Devil's Night in a crime ravaged and decrepit Detroit, where a young woman, Shelley Webster, is raped and seriously wounded, while her rock musician fiance Eric Draven is shot and thrown to his death from a window of their loft apartment. And the police sergeant Daryl Albrecht accompanies Shelley to the hospital, but she eventually dies of her injuries. The opening narration states that the legend of the crow carries souls to the land of the dead, and if the person died in tragic circumstances, the crow can resurrect the restless spirit to set things right. Crow, are you really doing your job here with Brandon Lee? I'm just asking. I'm just asking for a friend. So that's basically the opening. And then like, we see everything happen or whatever. Now, I had originally thought that the opening scene was where Brandon Lee had gotten killed, but apparently it's supposed to be later on in the film. You guys,
I didn't think it was there. I thought, okay, see, the way I always heard it was that it was the ending scene where he's fighting on the roof. That's where I always heard it was.
I so it's one of two things for sure. It's either the scene where he climbs through the window in the bedroom, which we're going to talk about here in a moment, or it's either this opening scene where where they're dragging him through the window.
Mm-hmm.
But after this
Mm-hmm.
opening scene, you see the crow in the graveyard, and he's cooing, and then you see Eric Draven pop out of his coffin, and that was the first time I started crying, bawling, crying, ugly crying because it was like
Yeah,
I
because
can't.
when I used to watch Unsolved Mysteries, that's what they said it was. They said that it was on the rooftop scene, where they said that he was on the roof and for purposes of a certain app that I have open, I have to say it like this, where they pew pew him on the roof. I thought that was the scene it was.
Allegedly. Anyways, so um normally Deke and I would like break down this movie like part for part, but because there's so much to cover and because we have so many big feelings about this, I'm just going to talk about certain things that jumped out at me about this movie. So the first thing was the little girl Sarah. Like, they doesn't give an approximate age, but I think she's between like 10 and 13 maybe, because I mean she's big enough to understand right and wrong, and she's like running around the city like
I would have guessed
skateboarding.
12 or 13 at
Yeah,
least.
like she's skateboarding and things like that, and she's the first person to see Eric Draven when he pulls her back from getting hit by a car um on the street, and she's like, "What are you supposed to be, a clown?" And he doesn't show her her face because she recognizes his voice right away. When he says it can't rain all the time, she turns around and she's like, "Oh my god, Eric!" And like apparent so it doesn't so the film doesn't make it clear in the beginning, but apparently they took care of this little girl. Um
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask. The way the film is going, are they supposed to? Okay, were they like her caregivers, or was that her sister? Because like that's how
so
the movie is playing. That was supposed to be her sister or something.
so if you remember in that opening sequence when they are putting her in the ambulance and Ernie Hudson or the detective says, your sister's gonna be okay, just stay here, whatever. And she's like, "That's not my sister. They took care of me." And I was like, I just had a moment where I was like, okay. But I was like, you guys have to remember, this is the 90s. This is the kind of shit that happened in the 90s, okay? It's not like now where you can call CPS and someone would have been there in like 20 minutes. No, this was the 90s, okay? And as you see the flashbacks, you'll see Shelly and you'll see Sarah and Shelly in Eric's apartment, and they're like playing with her and they're like eating and things like that. And that was the first thing that struck me is like the relationship between Eric and Sarah. It's like it wasn't like creepy or weird. It was more like a brother and a sister type of thing, like or like a caregiver, like guardian kind of thing. That was the first thing that made me cry though, is when but then Shelly in that one scene said to take care of Eric or like whatever, something like that. You guys, I watched this movie in tears, okay, with headphones on, and like it was hard to concentrate because I was crying so much. But I remember that. So I remember that was. I think they set that up perfectly because you could tell how bad this little girl was hurt or whatever. And then even in the scene with uh after Eric, I guess, confronted who I think is her mother and has that wonderful line about children. What does it say? Children, mothers are. It says some. He says like mothers are God on the lips and hearts of children or something like that. He says, "You guys,
No,
again, I was
he says mother is a word for God on the lips of all children. That's what he says.
there you go, something like that. You guys, again, I was bawling. It was hard. It was hard for me. Okay, but that was a good scene in the bathroom. Um, then the next thing that I remember is that this is in the comic. I've never read the Crow comic, but she asks if he's a clown, and apparently he's supposed to ask if she's a princess, but he doesn't do that because it's made apparent to us right away that these two knew each other. And there's another thing. This is toward the end before the movie ends, but I thought was so cute was when she's sleeping in the when Sarah's asleep in the graveyard and he's going to wake her up and he like shakes her little toes. I was like, that's so sweet. Why is that so sweet? But why am I crying? Bawling, just bawling. Like put a fork in me. I was done. But what stood out for you, like when you're sitting there watching the movie for the first time? Like anything stick out to you from the beginning?
Yes, the cat. I thought the cat was going to play a bigger part. To be honest with you, I thought there was going to be something where like the cat would come back into play, but like the cat was only in, like I would say 2 3 scenes.
Yeah, the cat's in the apartment and in like flashbacks
Because
where
okay, because if you remember in the movie when Eric comes back, right? He tries to pick up the cat and it scratches him. And I thought it was gonna play a bigger part because the little girl that you just mentioned, when she goes into the apartment, she picks up the cat and it doesn't do anything to her. So I thought maybe it was gonna play a bigger role.
I think that part, I think that signaling like when Eric comes back, he's not the Eric that left this earth. That he's something else because he set on revenge and technically, I mean, he's not a zombie, but he's not human. So I think that's why the cat scratched him. But yeah, I remember that, and then of course, the scene that really gets to me is when Eric Draven comes through the window and he finds Sarah's mother in bed with that. I don't even know, you guys. And they just shot up, and the other guy's holding the pew pew, and he starts shooting at Eric. And every time he takes off a shot, he says, "Why won't you fucking die?" And I was like, "Sir, I need for you to quit right this fucking minute because that was not fucking cool." Like, if they could have deleted that line, that line, just that line, I would have been fine. I would have been fine. I could have gotten through the rest of it, but like that part, just like, why? Why would you fucking say that knowing that like seconds later, that's. I'm gonna have to breathe for a second. And then what was
Yeah.
the next thing that you remember from this first watch?
Well, okay, so again, as I said, like I literally thought when I first saw it, I was like, I kept saying to myself, I was like, oh, I was like, the cat's gonna come back into play in this for some reason. Now, I thought, and this was just me because I was thinking about it a little too much. I was like, okay, I was like, because he's supposed to be a raven, and the cat doesn't like birds, because I know cats don't like birds. I also thought that was part of the reason why the cat scratched him.
Oh yeah, wasn't the crow in the apartment at that in that scene?
Yeah, and I thought that's why the cat scratched him was because he was trying to go after the bird. That's what I thought it was. And then I was like,
Maybe.
no. And then I was like, no, maybe it's something else. And then I was like, no. I was like, wait, the cat's gonna come back into play because when Sarah goes into the apartment and then she grabs the cat and it didn't do anything. Like it just let her pick him up. I was like, or pick it up because I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. I was like, that cat's gonna come back into play somehow. I was like, somehow the cat's gonna come back into play. And then like it was just like, okay, like cat's done. We're with it in the movie, like we're good.
Yeah, well, I there may have been something else that would have been filmed, but since
Because it made no sense that he was in two scenes and like the connection that he has with them, like it feels like it's leading to something bigger, but like they don't expound on it. They
well,
don't.
but yeah, but you have to remember this film. I mean, while Lee was mostly finished, well, he was almost finished with this film. There's still 8 more days of filming before he died, and so we may never actually know what those scenes would have been, or if there would have been more with that. But the next thing that really stood out to me is towards the end, after everything has happened, the battle at the graveyard, um, when Eric is leaned up against the Shelley's tombstone. Like, can we stop for a little while with the death references? Also, knowing what happened to Brandon Lee, the amount of guns in this film is. I remember you said to me like, "There's so many guns in this movie. Like, everybody has a gun."
Yeah, it was very uneasy to me. I was like, because like I was thinking about it, right? And I was like, knowing what happened, because like I'm 36 years old, y'all. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm an old fart. So
Yeah,
I basically remember, hearing the stories and hearing, what happened on the set. So I was like, okay, I was very uncomfortable with and excuse me for this app references. I was uneased by the amount of pew pews they had in this movie.
yeah. Normally, stuff like that doesn't bother me. Like seeing it in like a Marvel movie or whatever, but in this movie it really bothered me a lot. Like just the amount of and I know that when I was watching the special features on the DVD, um there's a wonderful interview with Brandon Lee where he says this poem, and I'll read it to you later, but he's talking about the guns on the set, and like how you have to be careful, and this like that, and I'm like, this was that apparently that interview was shot March 13th, and he died March 31st of 1993, and I was like, what are the fucking odds of that happening? Normally, like I said, um guns and films don't bother me as bad as it did in this movie. um but I think that was just because of everything that had happened and everything like that. And then, so while we're discussing guns, I want to say this. As we all know, there was another shooting of this type in 2021 on the Alec Baldwin film Rust. Okay. Deke and I were discussing this, and this is gonna sound fucked up, and this is how I feel about it. When everything happened with Rush, I felt like it was, how should I say this? I felt like it was, they were trying to make an example of this film. And the only reason why I say that is because I felt like the prosecutors and the people are like, okay, here we are 28 years later. We couldn't do this for Brandon Lee. Now we're going to do it for this. And I felt like it was blown out of proportion. I really do. I know that's fucked up, but hear me out. So I watched an interview with Shannon Lee, which is Brandon Lee's sister, and she was talking to Chris Cuomo on from CNN, and they were talking about the shooting that just happened, and she was saying what had she was explaining what had happened to her brother, um and about the court case, and for this new film or whatever. And she said that they won the civil suit, the wrongful death suit, but they can never prove negligence in the case of her brother or whatever. And I felt like, do I like Alec Baldwin? No, I don't like Alec Baldwin. I really don't. But do I think that he's a killer or a murderer? No, I don't think that he's a murderer. And no, I wouldn't. I mean, it was an accident. And I understand that guns have no place on a movie set because there is no such thing as a prop gun. They were firing blanks and bullets. Do I believe the armorer was guilty? Whoever was handling the prop guns? Yes, for her negligence and knowing that they were shooting live rounds and not really telling anyone. I believe she was guilty of that. But as far as them making like a big deal about it or whatever,
Can I say something really quick while you're paused? So there was
yeah,
one other thing that did stand out to me quite a bit in this movie. It was like, and I know he was probably trying to stray away from this, but like the action sequences, I was noticing that a lot of his father's karate style was coming out in a lot of the fight sequences. There was one thing that there was one part that kind of made me chuckle just a tad bit because there's a scene where he's fighting in the alley, right?
yeah,
And the scene, it's not now the movie is not at all funny, like it's not. But this part made me chuckle just a little bit because I caught this. So when he turns around, right? When he jumps up and then he turns around, I swear to God, that's a Sting move.
yeah. So anyways, back to the case, and then we'll get back to the movie. Um, I I just really felt like the media coverage and everything was just so over the top. And I felt like it was besmirching Brandon's legacy and everybody's legacy because yeah, they can win the civil, wrongful death suit. Yes, there that did happen. But to like go after Alec Baldwin and I think that was unnecessary. I really do think that was unnecessary. I'm
So do I, because like I think they were just trying to make an example of him because they couldn't get the guys that messed up on the set of this movie of The Crow. And
exactly, and that's exactly how I felt. I said I feel like they're just making this a huge bigger than what it should have actually been because of Brandon Lee. And I was like, yes, yes, there was negligence. I'm not denying that. Yes, the armor deserved, knowing that there was live rounds, she did deserve her prison time that she got. But as far as anything else, I don't think that was necessary. I really don't think it was necessary. And then to be and then to compare the two, it just felt wrong and weird. And then the next thing that I got to say about it is this is 28 years later from Brandon Lee's death to this thing, and now we still can't get this figured out with the pew pews on set, and that's just bullshit. It's just bullshit, and that's what it felt like, and that's how I interpreted things. Um, does Alec Baldwin have to live with what he did? Yeah, he'll have to live with that for the rest of his life. the actor who fired the pistol that shot Brandon Lee, said in several interviews, and he never talked about it. He only talked about it one time, that it was an accident. It was not ever supposed to happen. The gun wasn't even aimed at Brandon. But it happened. He said that he apologized to Linda, Brandon's mom, and Lisa, his fiance, and that he took a year off. He went to New York, and that he said he lived with the guilt for the rest of his life. Michael Massey passed away in 2016, I believe.
Rest in peace.
And so I just wanted to say that, because and that's how I felt about it when I was like, and this was before we had changed this podcast over or whatever, but I just wanted to talk about that part. Anyways, actually, I'm glad that you mentioned it. There were some comedic parts in this movie that I actually kind of giggled at.
Yeah,
I
like
was
there's
I was
some,
surprised at it.
like a lot of the fight scenes. I was like, oh, I was like, okay, I was like, that's where Sting gets all that shit from. Like all the jumps and the way that he jumps around the ring. Like if you watch, okay, so if we have any wrestling fans watching, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you know the wrestler Sting, like he does all these like high flying moves, like where he flies at his opponent from one side of the ring, like that's where he got it from, or from this movie. And like there's a certain scene where Brandon Lee, and I know this is funny, where he grabs like this baseball bat that the guy in the alley is gonna throw at him, and like he does this thing where he like throws it like this, and it's funny because I'm like, that's totally what Sting would do.
Yeah. There's a scene where he caught the knife with his hand, and that made me chuckle. He has some comic lines where he like looks over his shoulder. He's like, "Is that gasoline I smell?" And then fires the shot, and then the warehouse blows up. And I was like, why am I laughing and I'm crying at the same time?
The
Or
part that I thought was cool, and I noticed a lot of movies paying homage to this, is where he's standing in the middle of the street, and then like he lights the fire, and you just see the crow symbol around him.
yeah, they do that a lot in the movies. And then the part where he opens the door in the church, which is this scene right here, and the lights like highlight him like he's an angel. That was pretty sweet. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I did giggle at a couple of lines, and the best line that stood out to me was, it can't rain all the time, and yeah, it's right, and of course it can't rain all the time. But I also wanted to say about so Brandon Lee basically so this is so this is from Wikipedia. Basically, it says on March 31st, 1993, at EUE Screen Gem Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina, Lee was filming a scene where his character Eric is shot after witnessing the beating and rape of his fiancee. Again, this is debatable. We don't know for sure, but this is according to Wikipedia. Actor Michael Massey's character, Funboy, fires a 44 Magnum Smith & Wesson Model 629 revolver at Lee as he walks into the room. A scene filmed 2 weeks before Lee's death had called for the same gun to be shown in a close-up. Revolvers often use dummy cartridges fitted with bullets, but no powder or primer. During close-ups, as they look more realistic than the blank rounds, which have no bullets, instead of purchasing commercial dummy cartridges, the film's prop crew, hampered by time and money constraints, created their own by pulling the bullets from live rounds, dumping the powder charge but not the primer, then reinserting the bullets. Witnesses reported that 2 weeks before Lee's death, they saw an unsupervised actor pulling the trigger on the gun while it was loaded with the powderless but primed round. Having not removed the primer could detonate with enough energy to launch a bullet and lodge it in the barrel. In the fatal scene, which called for the revolver to be actually fired at Lee from a distance of 10 to 15 feet, the dummy cartridges were exchanged for blank rounds, which featured a live powder charge and primer but no bullet, thus allowing the gun to be fired without the risk of a natural projectile. As the production company had sent the firearms specialist home early, responsibilities for the guns were given to a prop assistant who was unaware of the rule for inspecting all the firearms before any handling. Therefore, the bullet was not checked, or therefore the barrel was not checked for obstructions, when the time came to load it with the blank rounds. Since the bullet from the dummy round was already trapped in the barrel, a condition known as a squib load, this caused the 44 Magnum bullet to be fired out of the barrel with virtually the same force as if the gun had been loaded with a live round, and it struck Lee in the abdomen, mortally wounding him. After Lee's death, the producers were faced with a decision on whether or not to continue with the film, and Lee had completed most of his scenes for the film and was scheduled to shoot only 3 more days. The rest of the cast and crew, except for Ernie Hudson, whose brother-in-law had just died, stayed in Wilmington. Paramount Pictures, which was initially interested in distributing The Crow theatrically, originally a direct-to-video feature, opted out of involvement due to delays in filming and some controversy over the violent content being inappropriately given Lee's death. However, Miramax picked it up with the intention of releasing it in theaters, and it injected further $8 million to complete the production, taking its budget to approximately $23 million. Lee's stunt double, Chad Stahelski, was used as a stand-in, and digital face replacement was used to superimpose Lee's face onto the head of the double.
You
The
can tell in
beginning,
some scenes. You can tell.
yeah, the beginning of the movie, which had not been finished, was rewritten, and the apartment scene remade using computer graphics from earlier scenes of Lee. A character from the original comic book was originally planned to be part of the adaptation and had even had film scenes. He had acted as a guide for Eric Draven between the worlds of the dead and the living, and he was set to be played by Michael Berryman, but the role was cut from the scene due to Lee's death. So that was the story of allegedly what happened on the set, but actually, I'm going to show you something else. Hold on a second.
So okay, so randomly, y'all, I want to point this out, right? As we're sitting here talking about this, I looked over at TikTok, right? And I looked at the likes, and it said six. It said 666.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, so
Okay,
I was like,
so
nope.
on the special features in the DVD, Brandon Lee had this wonderful little poem that he said. He says, "Because we don't know when we will die, we get to think of life as an inexhaustible well. Yet everything happens a certain number of times and a very small number. Really, how many more times will you remember a certain afternoon of your childhood? Some afternoon that was deeply part of your being that you can't even conceive of your life without it. Perhaps 4 or 5 times more, perhaps not even that. How many more times will you watch the full moon rise? Perhaps 20, and yet it all seems limited." And he actually there's an interview that actually shows that. And I'm gonna share my screen so you guys can see this, but hold on a second. Looking at hold on and share audio. You have to let.
You're muted now. I can't hear you. Like you're literally muted.
Let's redo it again. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so we're gonna share my screen, and I'm gonna show you some of the pictures of. This is the. Can you see it on my screen? This is the poem
Yes, I
that
can see it.
appears on Brandon Lee's grave. And then this is he's buried at Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle, Washington. And then these are some pictures of what it looked like in the 90s. Before they updated it. Um, because they changed the epitaph. This is what it looks like now.
He's buried next to his dad, right?
He's buried next to his dad, Bruce, in Seattle. And then this is what it looked like in the 90s. But yeah, I wanted to show that to you so y'all could see that. But anyways, so the next thing I think that we should talk about is who Brandon Lee actually was. So let's discuss Brandon Lee, shall we? So from Wikipedia, guys, by the way, so you guys can follow along. Brandon Lee was an American actor, establishing himself as a rising star in the early 90s. He landed what was supposed to be his breakthrough role as Eric Draven in the supernatural superhero film The Crow. However, Lee's life was cut short by his accidental death during the film's production. Lee was the son of martial artist and film star Bruce Lee, who died when Brandon was 8 years old. I did not know that until I was actually doing the research for this movie. Rest in peace, Bruce Lee. I did know that he was the son of Bruce Lee, but I digest. Lee, who followed in his father's footsteps, trained in martial arts, including Jeet Kun Do, Wing Chun, and Eskrima. Anyways, you can look that up. He studied acting at Emerson College and the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute. He started his career with leading roles in the Hong Kong action film Legacy of Rage and the straight to video Laser Mission, which was a financial success on home video. Lee also appeared in two spin offs of the 1970s series Kung Fu, the television film Kung Fu the Movie, and the pilot Kung Fu the Next Generation. I've not seen those.
I think
Transitioning
I'd seen it because I think Sasha Mitchell from Step by Step was in there.
transitioning to Hollywood productions, Lee first starred in the Warner Brothers comedy cop film Showdown in Little Tokyo. I don't think I've seen that one.
Never seen that one.
Co-starring my bae Dolph Lundgren. While it did not do well with audiences and critics upon its release, it later became a cult film, and this was followed by a leading role in Rapid Fire, which was produced by 20th Century Fox, alongside Jeff Amata. Is credit for the fight choreography, which contained elements of Jeet Kun Do. Um, though the film was not well received, critics praised Lee's on-screen presence. And after being cast to headline The Crow, Lee had filmed nearly all his scenes when he was fatally wounded on the set by a prop gun. Lee posthumously received praise for his performance, while the film became a critical and commercial success. His career has drawn parallels to his father, both men having died young prior to the release of their breakthrough films. So, early life, Brandon was born in February 1st, 1965, at East Oakland Hospital
Oh, so
in
his
Oakland,
birthday just
California.
passed.
Yeah, it was last week.
Yeah, his birthday literally just passed. So happy late birthday, Brandon.
He's the son of martial artist and actor Bruce Lee and Linda Lee Cadwell. From a young age, Lee learned martial arts from his father, and who was well-known practitioner of martial arts and the film star. Lee said that family lived between Hong Kong and the United States due to his father's career. While visiting his father's sets, Lee became interested in acting. Lee's father died suddenly in 1973, leaving a legacy that made him an icon in of martial arts in cinema. Grace Ho, Lee's grandmother, said that by the age of 5, he could kick through an inch board. Look, oh my god, you gotta see these pictures. Hold on, let me share my screen so you can see some of these baby pictures. They're so cute. He has blonde hair. All right, so this is Wikipedia for Brandon Lee. And look at him with his dad and his blonde hair. So cute. So adorable. All right. So after Lee's family moved back to California and Lee began studying with Dan Insanto, uh, one of his father's students when he was 9. Later in his youth, Lee also trained with Richard Bustillo and Jeff Imada. Imada said that when Lee was in his teens, he struggled with his identity, having to train in dojos, which included large photos of his father, which troubled him. I get that. According to Amada, this led Lee to leave the martial arts in favor of soccer. Both would reconnect later in their film careers, which Amada working as a stunt double and fight coordinator in several of Lee's upcoming films. Meanwhile, Lee was a rebellious high school student. In 1984, 4 months prior to his graduation, Lee was asked to leave Chadwick School for misbehavior. That year, Lee received
Yes.
his GED from Marlest High School. So his sister Shannon Lee has a podcast called the Bruce Lee Podcast. And in
I
this
gotta check it out because
podcast,
I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan, so I gotta check that out.
she had her mother on and they were talking about Brandon and they were talking Linda was talking about Brandon getting kicked out of high school because he was the student body president and he convinced everybody in the school what the school wasn't doing for them, which obviously was right. Like, and so and she said she was like literally on a first name basis with everyone at the school. And I was like, I honestly love that for you, Brandon. I really do. All right. So Lee pursued his studies in New York City, where he took acting lessons at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute, and he went on to Emerson College in Boston, where he majored in theater. And during this time, Lee appeared in several stage productions. He was the part of Eric Morris in the New American Theater, which he acted with John Lee Hancock's play Full Fed Beast. Um, but yeah, that was his life, and that was Brandon Lee. And some of these pictures. Okay, I know who this is. Let me show you who this. Let me show you this picture that I'm looking at on Wikipedia, and you tell me if you know who this guy that he's standing next to is. Are you ready?
Oh, I know exactly who that is.
I'm like, that's my dude from the Ninja
That's
Turtles
Master
movie.
Tatsu from the Ninja Turtles. I know exactly who that is.
Exactly, I know exactly who that is.
One,
Um,
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1, I think.
yes, the first one. Again, here's a picture of his grave. Um, in August 1993, Lee's mother, Linda, filed a lawsuit against the filmmakers alleging negligence in the death of her son, obviously. And then the quote
Wait,
that
scroll back up a second. Something caught my eye, and I wanted to bring light to that. So, okay, so I'm reading here, and it says, um, in Los Angeles, and then it says, among attendees were Kiefer
Mhm.
Sutherland, Lou Diamond Phillips, David Hasselhoff, Steven Seagal, David Card Cardine,
Carradine, he
Carradine.
played Kung Fu. So basically, it was saying that how he died. Um, so let's back up a little bit. Okay, so after Massey pulled the trigger and shot Lee, Lee fell backwards instead of forwards as he was supposed to. When the director yelled cut, Lee did not stand up, and the crew thought that he was either still acting or joking. Jeff Amata, who immediately checked Lee, noticed something wrong when he came close and noticed Lee was unconscious and breathing heavily. Medic Clyde Basie went to Lee and shook him to see if he was dazed by hitting his head during the fall, but did not think that Lee had been shot since there was no visible bleeding. Basie took Lee's pulse, which was regular, but within 2 to 3 minutes it slowed down dramatically and stopped. Lee was rushed to the new Hanover Regional Medical Center in Wilmington, North Carolina, and attempts to save him were unsuccessful after 6 hours of emergency surgery. Lee was pronounced dead on March 31st, 1993 at 1:03 p.m. He was 28 years old. The shooting
Damn.
the shooting was ruled an accidental death due to negligence, and Lee's death led to the reemergence of conspiracy theories surrounding his father's similarly early death. Lee was buried next to his father at the Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle, Washington, and a private funeral attended by 50 took place in Seattle on April 3rd, uh, following the following day. 200 of Lee's family and business associates attended the memorial service at actress Polly Bergen's house in Los Angeles. And among the attendees were Kiefer Sutherland, Lou Diamond Phillips, David Hasselhoff, Steven Seagal, David Carradine, and Melissa Etheridge.
Okay, now
Um,
see right there, that's fascinating because I would have never pegged Lou Diamond Phillips to have been there. Like that's surprising me.
so I'm gonna stop the screen share for a minute because there is something else that I would like for everyone to see. Hold on just a second. See if I can find it. All right.
Excuse me, y'all.
Hold on.
Now,
Hold
if
on a
I'm not
second.
mistaken, David Carradine also is has also passed, right?
I think he was. You have to look it up on your phone. I think he was the one that passed away.
I don't say it. But he did pass away, right?
Yes. Okay, hold on. I've got
You
it.
can't say it because I'm on a certain app where they watching my ass.
Okay, so I'm gonna put this on a hold for a minute. I'll be right back. Okay. Turn him back. So there's. Okay, so there's a video that's on YouTube. It's from ET. It's Brandon Lee's death inside the Crow shooting and Bruce Lee's family curse. I was gonna show some of the footage, but it's kind of hard to sit through and kind of figure out what's going on, and so I'm gonna link it in the show notes below so you guys can watch it if you feel free to. I don't want to talk about it anymore because I want to talk about something else and go back to this film and do what we do best. So every time we discuss a film, we usually talk about, character and like how things progressed. So of course we're gonna do that with this film, and then we're gonna do something else that's a little bit different. Okay. So, do you think, Deke, that from the beginning of this movie to the end of the movie, you can see the character changes?
Yes.
And do you think that Eric Draven changes for the better or for the worse?
Neither, to be honest with you. I think that it was just a happenstance where he had to come back to literally, I guess, in some ways, have that final moment of finally resting because like the way that he is unalived in the movie, like it was tragic. So he had to come back for his revenge. So I think he was justified, to be honest with you.
Yeah. All right. And the next thing is, did you notice any big guest stars in this film?
Yes.
I mean, other than Ernie Hudson, it was like a big star.
Then
But
no.
who else?
Then no.
Yeah, so that was I say no because like I've seen Ernie Hudson in lots of gritty films and he's still alive by the way. Um so
Well,
uh,
okay, well, I was gonna say, well, technically Brandon Lee, but he's the star of the movie, so that doesn't count.
yeah. All right. So if you could be a character in this movie, what character would you be and create a story for them?
I would have gone into more depth, into more depths of Ernie Hudson's character. Like, I would have loved to have known, like, because apparently, like, there's a little bit more there that we weren't told. So I would love to know, the backstory because apparently, like, he himself also knew Eric somehow, like, because when they're talking in the apartment, like, he knew him. I mean, other than him investigating the unaliving, if you could say. But at the same time, like, I would love to know if there was more of a backstory there.
Yeah. So I don't know if I could be a character in this movie, but I would say that I could see Eric Draven being an Avenger because technically what he was doing was avenging. So I could see him like being on the Avengers team. Um
Also, I was gonna bring light to that really quick. Okay? So isn't that comic book? Isn't that a Marvel comic book, or am I mistaken?
I don't know if it's a Marvel comic book. I didn't see Marvel insignia because Marvel they'll put their insignia even if they are working with other projects like Sony and Miramax for like Spider-Man and Hulk. I don't think it's a Marvel comic, but
Okay,
all
because I
right.
thought I read that somewhere.
So
But okay.
the new category since Brandon Lee's not here with us and we just had a remake of The Crow in the multiverse. What would have happened to Brandon Lee and The Crow if we could view in the multiverse? Deke, you start.
Okay, well, I'm gonna kind of give my synopsis of how I would have done this. I think the Crow movie would have been made, but given the circumstance of what happened, I don't think he would have let it been released. I don't think he would. I think it would have been one of those movies where it would have been shelved, much like a movie of Jerry Lewis that I will not name for obvious reasons. But like, I think it would have been one of those projects of like, it would have never seen the light of day while he was, recovering, and then maybe in time, he would have been like, okay, you know what, let's release it. I'm ready. Let's release it.
Mhm. And then, does he live? Does he die? Does he go on to have a
No,
career in the multiverse?
in the multiverse, he does live. He does live, and he has a bigger career, doing the Matrix and doing movies like that. I could also kind of see him, and I'm sorry for this, Viggo Mortensen. Please don't hate me for this, but I could also see him playing Aragorn in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so in my
Viggo
multiverse,
Mortensen, don't hate me for that. I'm still a huge fan, though.
yeah, I can agree. So yes, in the multiverse, the accident still happens. Uh, it takes him a little while, like maybe 18 months to 2 years to fully recover from the accident, like to be back up on his feet and everything like that. He got to get married to the girl that he loved. Obviously, they start their family, things like that. And he's just like, he's gonna take a he took time off to recover and to live his life and to be with his wife and his kids and everything in the multiverse. And then he was like, I don't know if I'm gonna act again. So he didn't act for a little while. He did teach martial arts and was getting popular. I see him now. I don't see him doing anything with wrestling per se, but I do see him as being like a trainer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I could see him training Sting after, like, 'cause I could see him, like, I could see that. Okay, so maybe the movie does get released, and like he hears about Sting kind of being this character, and so he's like, okay, well, let me go and train him.
So yeah, in my multiverse, The Crow does get released, and it does make him a big star, but he's still recovering. It's 2 years later. He doesn't want to act, so he's like, I'm not acting no more. But like, thank you, and everything. So like, falls off the face of the planet. Instead, he's teaching. He's doing martial arts. Kind of at home, kind of zen. He does a little bit for MMA as a whole, and I can see him training wrestlers or whatever. But then
Like, yeah, no, like I said, like I could see it in my mind's eye. Like he hears talk that, there's that wrestler Sting that is kind of taking this character, and like, you should check it out. And like, he'll, like, I see him like seeing it, and then he's like, okay, let me go and train him.
I also see that he doesn't do a lot of interviews or whatever. And then I see him getting the part in the Matrix, and that's like his first. Like, he doesn't think the Matrix is going to be big, but then the Matrix does become big, and then you have all the sequels. And then again, he takes time off because he's like, okay, this was a franchise. Like, that's not what I wanted to do. But then I could also see him doing movies like, these are Reeves movies, by the way, but I could literally see him having Keanu Reeves' career, like doing movies like Sweet November and The Lake House and those type of things. But then I also can see him doing The Lord of the Rings as well, The Hobbit, because, like, can you imagine if he was Aragorn?
Like, I can kind of see it. Now look, Viggo Mortensen, I'm a huge fan. Love you as
I love
Aragorn,
Viggo
but
Mortensen.
I'm recasting you in my multiverse. Okay, sorry about it. Sorry about it. Sorry about it. Sorry
Exactly.
about it.
Sorry about it. Sorry.
Okay, you want me Boromir now in the multiverse? Okay, deal with it, sir.
Yeah, and then so after the Lord of the Rings, of course he's like, I'm just not gonna do anything. He doesn't, do any big films or whatever. And then I could see him coming back and doing like maybe John Wick with someone like Keanu Reeves. But then I could also see him like coming full circle and actually being in The Crow. So remember how they talked about the guide? So in the remake, The Crow, right? There's a guide that um is guiding Bill Skarsgård in the Crow's life or whatever, where he goes through the void or whatever. I could see that being Brandon Lee. I could see that literally being Brandon Lee, and I was like, oh my god, that would have been him. Like, I could see that cameo happening in the multiverse.
Yeah, like, because I
And
can see that. Oh, people will be asking, like, so where is he? Like, since Lord of the Rings, like, he hasn't really done anything. Nobody's heard from him. Like, he just
yeah,
dropped off the face of the earth. Where is he? And then, bada boom, there he is.
but like he hasn't really dropped off the face of the earth, because I could totally see him getting into the MMA field and like training a lot of people and like kind of like taking it taking it easy because he still has a lot of anxiety from making The Crow, but then he's going to come back and be in the cameo in this new movie with Bill Skarsgård and like sort of passing the torch. And um also I just want to say that the reason obviously Bill Skarsgård cannot wear the Crow makeup is because it's Pennywise. Also, if you look closely at certain scenes from The Crow, there's certain parts in this movie that are word for word, shot by shot, the same things that Heath Ledger Joker does in the movie. I picked it up right away. I was like, I know that. And also in the multiverse, Bruce Lee trained Batman. If you saw the show, you know. If you saw the show, you fucking know. Am I right, Deke?
Yep, the original show with Adam West.
Absolutely.
Hold on, because my phone's going off. Go ahead.
All right, so Deke, I think I want to live in the multiverse.
Same.
What
I want to
about
go back to
you?
the multiverse. I want to go back to the
Yeah.
multiverse.
I want to go live in the multiverse. Wanda can visit me every now and again. All right, you guys. That was The Crow. That was Brandon Lee.
And this is
I'm
our official
exhausted.
comeback because like we've
Yes, this is
been
our official comeback because I've been so busy. And look, they're trying to get me to come into the hotel right now, but I don't want to because I'm too tired and I want to go. Like, I honestly want to,
I'm just playing.
because I honestly want to just
Chillax.
chillax for a little. Like, I want to enjoy my time off, and I'm gonna take a nap, and then I'm gonna get ready to go.
Yeah, I
Um,
gotta go. I'm gonna go out though here in a minute. I'm gonna go do some rides. So
yeah, and I'm gonna go take the trash out. But tomorrow we're gonna do Ringo Starr. He has a new album, a country album, and I really
call
wish he
Ringo
does.
Hold'em. No, I'm just playing.
Right. I was literally telling Deke when I heard that first song, I was like, where's Beyonce? Because I was like, can you imagine Ringo and Beyonce and their country albums? Like, okay, sir. All right, you guys. The Crow and Brandon Lee
And
have my heart.
this is gonna sound morbid. This is gonna sound morbid to say, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I guess that concludes this episode, and we will see you again soon.
I'm obsessed. I will definitely be watching. I don't know if I could watch it again and again and again, but I'm gonna watch it again tonight. Completely unbiased, not doing research for this show and everything like that, and trying to enjoy it because it does have comedic moments that I did
Say
giggle
goodbye to
at.
everyone.
Goodbye, Tashi. Goodbye. Bye,